Good afternoon, everyone. How's everyone doing today on wonderful Wednesday? And as you see here, our guest today, Jay, is going to be sharing his Star Wars story on a special edition of Conversations for Humanity. And of course, this is Star Wars Week here at Bringing Humanity Together. So we're talking everything Star Wars. And what we talked about yesterday was uh, Tales from the Dark Side, the lessons of leadership from Darth Vader. And today we'll be speaking with Jay and how Star Wars has literally has changed his life and everything. And also on the next broadcast, probably later on in the week, I'll be sharing with you guys how Star Wars has changed my life and everything like that. But Jay, glad to see you here today, sir. Kind of please introduce yourself, and then we'll go right into your story.
Good afternoon, everyone, and I hope you all had an awesome May 4th. May the 4th be with us all, right? My name is Jay. I go by the pronoun he, him, and I have been a huge Star Wars fan since I was very young. I first grew up with the last three movies, 4, 5, and 6. And then as time grew on, I started to watch 1, 2, and 3. And I was really fascinated by the story and the TV and all the series that got included in between the movies. And I want to let everyone know here that I am a male individual with a tracheostomy on my neck, uh, which symbolizes a disability that I have called congenital central hyperventilation syndrome. It is a breathing disability. However, if there was from one of the characters in the movies and TV shows, there was one character that kind of represents the nature of the breathing portion. It would have to be the very infamous Darth Vader. So thank you for allowing me to introduce myself, and I'm very curious and excited to answer all your questions. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jay. And we're glad that you're here. And again, I truly believe not only a story matters, but sometimes a story that we share with people can be very inspirational, very not only intentional too as well, but also can be of great impact and significance when we are just willing to share it and we just maybe have that opportunity to maybe change one person's life at that given point in time and everything. But we would love to hear your Star Wars story of how it really changed fundamentally your life, maybe from that very first movie back in 1977 to where you are today. And so, please, Jay, come share your Star Wars story here on Conversations for Humanity.
Thank you, Chris. And I actually was not even in this world until the 1990s. When actually the 90s was when I first started watching the movies. My nurses, they would one of my nurses who is one of my nurses, she had bought the videotapes of the old versions of Star Wars: A New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi. And what really was interesting was, how familiar I got with the characters. It was so interesting how they introduced when I first was watching the A New Hope, you know, uh, being able to get introduced to characters like C3PO and R2D2 and Princess Leia and the old version of Obi-Wan Kenobi and uh, Luke Skywalker. It was so awesome, and being able to be familiar with some of the planets that you know we have may not even heard of. It's really quite fascinating, and that's when I first got into science fiction. I sci-fi is something we can't take for granted. It's something that's out of this world. When I every day when I look up in the sky, you know, it reminds me of it reminds me of Star Wars to this day. You know, every day, when there's like a when you hear that there will be like a lunar eclipse, or you might see like night lights, or not night lights, I'm sorry, but oh my god, I can't think of the word, but you in the sky, it's colorful, and the rainbow, and it's really, and the twin suns and sunsets, and it's really fascinating. And then, after that, after watching Empire Strikes Back, I really was fascinated how, you know, Luke Skywalker could is going to be trained into, becoming a Jedi and learning the ways of the lightsaber. You know, I what I liked about the lightsaber weapon that they use is that it has that swinging and glowy light, light, uh light. And what's fascinating is during the nighttime, when it's dark, like, the light, it 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 beams. And what was also fascinating was uh Master Yoda, which we all got introduced to. um and at the time, he was so old that he had to use a cane, and even in 1, 2, 3, he used a cane. But I'm talking about before that. And it was quite interesting how the ending. Oh my gosh, the ending! It was a revealing part was when Darth Vader says, "I am your father." That was really when it hit me, like, I really that can't be right, and it's impossible. And then after watching Return of the Jedi, um, that was just, oh my gosh, the sixth movie where Luke uh goes back to Dagobah, and is regretting the moment that he rushed to face Darth Vader on Bespin, and talks to Obi-Wan Kenobi about what it was like to train Darth Vader. And that, at that time, I was not familiar about Anakin Skywalker, who uh, who is who is Darth Vader. So I didn't know about that. But once, and this was back when I used to live in Oxford. And then in the late 2000s, when we had moved to another town in Massachusetts, I started to watch, The Phantom Menace. And that that was a really touching moment as to how, and how Darth Vader's journey began as a young Anakin. We get to see how how we get to see how well trained he is in pod racing, how he uses his wits to and his wits and the gadgets to outdo Saboba. And then and then actually uh watching the fun part, which is getting introduced to the person responsible for uh for for you know for the war. And that person would be Darth Sidious. But the interesting portion is we don't know that Darth Sidious and Palpatine are the same person. That's something that we don't see until Revenge of the Sith. And the other portion that's really fascinating is uh how how the expression of Anakin, sometimes he expresses, this anger because in episode 2, um we see that he has dreams of his mother being either, attacked or killed by people on Tatooine. He has these visions, and then when he goes to Tatooine, he finds out that Tusken Raiders are responsible for killing his mother, and then when she dies in his arms, that's when he starts to have this anguish feeling in him and he begins to kill the Tusken Raiders, and then once he goes back to his home, he looks at his hands and he says, "I killed them all. They're dead, every single one of them." And he's he 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 expresses his anger, his power, uh, when he talks to Padme, and then when he and so that's really my story. That's the best I got, but I'm really glad that I was able to share that with you. And based on my description, I think we can learn so much about how we express ourselves, how knowledge and training is so important, whether it's in your personal life or your business life. I think those are types of takeaways we can learn from this. So thank you for allowing me to speak, and I welcome any other questions or comments.
Can I ask?
Well, Jay,
Go ahead. Sorry.
Jay, thank you so much. And Anthony, I see you here today, sir. Glad to see you here. Anthony, you got something for
Well,
us?
yeah. I mean, I can tell he's really interested in it, and I missed some parts of it. So I was wondering, like, if there was any aspects of it that when you saw it, it hit you emotionally, not just because of what happened in the film, but because of how it applied to you in some way, like something that was confirmed by it, or something that made you think, like, maybe I need to think about things or do something differently, and it was like confirmed in the film. Was there any moments like that?
Yeah, that's a good question. What is your name, Anthony?
Yes.
Yeah, thank
Yeah,
you,
Anthony
Anthony, for
Hawk.
that. Thank you, Anthony, for that question. Actually, yes. Actually, one thing that no, I'm sorry about that. One thing that you know, when when we go and we when we when watching Return of the Jedi, when we see that Luke regrets that he had rushed to face Darth Vader in The Empire Strikes Back. He realizes his failure, that he should have listened to his mentors. He shouldn't have rushed so much to make a decision to go to Bespin's in a rush you know uh to rescue Han Solo. But because Han Solo was his friend, he had that vision that he saw sitting in the clouds, and that he had friends who were uh, um, who were in trouble.
Mhm.
Um, but when he goes to Bespin to rescue Han Solo and Leia and R2D2 and 3PO uh, from the clutches of
See,
the
if I'm
Empire.
sorry, I don't, I'm sorry, if I could, I was more curious about, I mean, and feel free to say no, but like if it was like something more personal. So like, for example, when you were mentioning the aspect about like rushing to do something, right? There's been a
Yeah,
lot of times where like I've told myself personally that it's better to show up with a diamond in my back pocket than like shit stains in my underwear, which is basically like it's so easy to want to rush to get something done, especially when you have pressure and the pressure of lives or people's opinions. We've all experienced that, and then so to be able to like realize from what happened in the film how that could apply to you would be like the example I was wondering. Do you have any examples that you would feel comfortable sharing where like
Y-
you talked to someone you know or you did
y-
something?
yeah, I mean, I actually had just faced my own failure, and this is where I we can tie back into the cell where we rush into things and we don't think before we do. Um, and where I had failed was, you know, last week I was supposed to have my own LinkedIn event on transforming disabilities into abilities, and this was going to be a LinkedIn event. And I was hoping that it would become successful. Uh, this was going to be a great opportunity to spread my message about disabilities to people who may not know about dis- disabilities and some of the things that we face in today's society. But where I had failed and where I rushed was I was not prepared. I did not prepare for to have conversations about how to do LinkedIn events. So what I did today in order to learn my lesson is and to fix that failure is today I had a conversation with a LinkedIn queen. She is actually very active on LinkedIn. She does audio events. Unfortunately, I don't want to mention the name because I didn't seek her permission. However, she was very much into LinkedIn. She talked to me about Restream actually, which we are using today. And she actually trained me as to what are some of things I have to do on Restream so that I don't have to post the event myself on LinkedIn. Restream will take care of that for you. And so that's something I like to tie my own personal story into. I hope that answers your question, Anthony.
Yeah, that was definitely more along the lines of what I was asking about. So now, like looking at the film, because you went over like a lot of major points. When it comes to, well, actually, I want to stop there and ask. I had another question. When it comes to your addressing failure, when you see failure, do you see failure as something that's interesting, exciting, and or is it something that you try to avoid or minimize?
That's a very good question. I don't think we see failure as something exciting. I think we see failure as something that we can learn from. We can learn from our failures. You know, uh, even when we make a mistake or when we do something wrong, okay, there is always that someone to help us. Actually, you touched upon something, an interesting point. And I'll share this. I was at work today, and a customer came to me and she had some stuff, and she was going to do split payments. Uh, and I thought that I had pressed for the first half of the transaction, she wanted to do one form of payment for a certain amount. I thought I had pressed card for the enter amount. I thought I had pressed card. Instead, I did cash and then typed in the amount. That was a mistake on my part. So what did I do? Did I say, "Oh my gosh, I messed up"? Did I do that? No. I asked for help. That's why you want to seek out your superiors, your managers, and say, uh, um, X, Y, and
Oh,
Z,
yeah.
can you please help me? I have done something wrong. And if you ask for help, they will be more than happy to help you fixing that mistake. And that's something we can all learn from.
Definitely. I feel like sometimes I worry about the difficulty because sometimes it gets to a point where people are willing to help, but then it's like, are they able to help? But on another aspect, when it comes to failure, one aspect of like how failure might be exciting is like if you're trying something new and you don't necessarily know where you're going or if you're doing the right thing, you could think to yourself, okay, am I going to go my whole life, this whole process, and not fail ever? And that's pretty unlikely because if you are, then you're aiming way too low. You could do better in life. So you think to yourself, okay, if I had to choose, then would I rather fail right here, right now? or do I want to fail next week at the same time? Do I want to put an extra week or a month or a year? Like, do I want to be a year down the road and then find this out? And so when it hits you in the chest and it hurts, you go, cool. Because however bad that hurt, it could have been so much worse. It's almost like if a car hit you and you look down at your leg and you're like, okay, my leg is just broken. I'm still alive. Like, it's not that bad, you know? Instead of worrying about like so much concern, like, oh my goodness, because people they'll get so focused on like the bad thing that happened that I think they'll miss the whole purpose of negative emotions, right? It's not simply to bathe yourself in the bad feelings, but it's to look at, okay, I did this thing, I thought this was right, but it obviously wasn't because I feel like this. So then you connect the feeling to what you did, so that way the next day when you come back, you're not trying to process or think about what you should or shouldn't do. It's intuitive now. You just feel it. You just look over there and you cringe, you move away. But then what that allows you to do is basically find your way by knocking out all the past. So imagine there's like, I could maybe mess up like there's like 50 ways to possibly go about something, but only one of them is right. In my head, it's like I wonder if there's a way that I could successfully fail at least half that amount of times. And like if I could fail 49 times today right now, that would be pretty great because then I would have it done. But again, if you fail the first time, you're like, oh man, you start beating yourself up about it. You like it feels like you're kind of just wasting your own time, and it's masochistic. It's like you're torturing yourself because you can choose to experience it more or less. And I feel like I see that with certain characters that are more. I don't know if I'd have to watch more of the film, but like Yoda and a lot of other characters seem to be more able to handle recognizing, okay, there was a mistake and moving forward. Whereas, others maybe want to double down. So like Darth Vader doubled down a lot until the end. Uh, Other people, I mean, that's just general in life. It's hard to turn down
And
something that you thought was right.
one more thing, one more point I'll make about failure. And you're right. Failure can sometimes be exciting. The fact that I'm challenged. Okay, I'm disabled. Okay, um, sometimes I say to myself, like, oh my gosh, I feel it sometimes in me that you know what what is wrong with me? Where did I fail? What am I not doing? And sometimes and how can you make it exciting? You can make it exciting by overcoming that failure, right? I mean,
Yeah.
think about it. I'm straight, okay, um, and but I overcame that area where I can go to work. I can spread the message to the community. I can go outside with my family to places like the museum and all these cool places. I can watch movies. I can I have a passion for Marvel stuff. I can watch Marvel, Star Wars, even Tom and Jerry. I can do all that. And that's what makes failure exciting is that you can overcome those failures.
I think another way to even think about that, because when you say overcoming a failure, it almost sounds like there's a hill and you got to go all the way up the hill and then you finally get to the top of the hill and you're like, all right, I'm done. But instead, you could consider what the benefit, like what you get at the end. And so instead of thinking about overcoming, thinking about the fact that, like, okay, so for example, looking at the idea that you're disabled, imagine yourself looking left and looking right with a whole bunch of successful people that everyone looks up to, and you get to look at them and say, huh, we're both in the same place, but look at all of this extra weight I had to carry. It's like if we had to run the same marathon, we got to the end of the marathon, but then everyone is getting praise, and then you drop a big bag full of weight to show them, like, okay, like, think about how proud you'd be to know that you could still do what you wanted to do, even knowing that you're disabled. So maybe even in this situation, being disabled gives you an opportunity to even excel further in the way you feel. Because if you were normal and you succeeded, then you've got the benefit of that. But sometimes recognizing that, like, it was extra difficult and you did overcome it, not only does it make it exciting, but then now you look out in the world and you see an obstacle, and it's less about the problem of the obstacle and more like, I wonder what that's going to turn me into, right? Like Batman, having to lose his parents and having to face his failure, your fears of failure, or like Spider-Man having to get bit, just having to accept like, okay, if I just get the pain now, can I go and be special after? And so you're looking at it as like taking your medicine almost, and not so much about, I guess, again, the actual overcoming, but then like what you get from it. Something I'm working on doing as I say it. So it's like it's difficult to not focus on the hill, but to focus on what the hill gets to you too. And it's a way better way, I think, of looking at it, because then you can get excited. Like, okay, I don't even care. Like I could fail 5 times, 50, 100. At the end of the day, I'm going to be all over that hill. And then when I'm looking back at it, I'm going to think to myself, wow, now I'm even stronger. Like if I was to go back and do that hill again, it wouldn't even be a challenge. So now you're looking for the next thing and then the next challenge. And you get to a point where maybe you get obsessed with, David Goggins, you could get obsessed like that guy. Or you're just trying to find ways to make life harder because you made yourself so resilient. And I think that could be somewhere looking at your disability. Like you were meant to carry that disability, to go through the pain and the failure, so that way you could go and show others, like, look, you've got no excuses. Do you want it or not? Is what the question is.
Hmm.
I think a lot of people don't actually want it. They just think they want it. And then they suffer because they're trying to avoid suffering and pain. But life is about finding that suffering and pain that for you to solve. I think you found yours.
Yeah,
You
thank you.
got to help others. How would you like to help others with disabilities find theirs? Because there's going to be so many different ways that people can overcome failures. Like when it comes to disabilities and the problems that you think others face the most, like what would be the biggest problem you think that they feel or that they experience throughout the day? Do you have any situations that like you can think to yourself like, as anyone with a disability might relate to this feeling more, and it's like a pain that you have that you can explain? Or I
Um,
feel like that's kind of a hard question, but
yeah, I'm trying to understand the question as a whole. And, like,
okay. So I can give you an example. Like I don't believe this, but some people will think like, oh, because of my skin color, things are going to be more difficult, and then they'll go and challenge that. Having a disability and the way you have to interact with the world has unique challenges. Are there any unique challenges that you could mention that people like yourself might face that you have already overcome?
um, you know, I think the fact that one of the challenges that I had overcome is the fact that you know um that's a hard one. That's a hard one to
I mean,
answer.
I'm sure maybe like how people, even if it's maybe not how people perceive you, but how you think people think about you. Because I know for a lot of people generally, like like our whole lives are based on what we think others think about us. And so I'm guessing with a disability, that may be harder or worse. But if you had like a magic lamp and you could just wish away one thing, not like the disability itself, but like one problem that you face because of the disability, what would be that one thing that you would fix? Yeah,
I
probably
think the
still
one
hard.
thing, I think the one thing that I wish we could eliminate is uh people you know think it's I wish people would not you know make fun of our disability. I think that's one thing, and I actually encountered this just the other day. Um, uh, I think it was in. I'm not sure if it was in Chris's post or if it was on the page. A couple of days ago, I had posted a picture of myself uh, wearing a Star Wars themed T-shirt, and the I think I don't know, I don't want to name the person, but someone had said, "Is that a Tie Fighter around your neck?" And I was like, no, that's not a Tie Fighter around my neck. That is a tracheostomy." The tracheostomy, again, as I stated in my introduction, the tracheostomy is a symbolizes the um, the uh, the disability that I have, which is congenital central hyperventilation syndrome. It's a very rare respiratory disability. The patient doesn't breathe as normally as regular people do, so they have to go on a ventilator when they go to sleep. Sometimes maybe 24/7, sometimes only once or twice, depending on how severe the case is.
But
And
yeah,
so
so
the
it's a
first,
real thing,
yeah,
and they
it's not
yeah, it's I
widely
mean it's
talked.
obvious, but basically it's
It,
something serious that someone kind of made like a joke about, like in their ignorance.
yeah,
So
yeah,
like this
yeah.
this little
So
weird thing that I put on, like oh,
yeah,
I'm sorry, go
no,
ahead.
yeah, no, I want to. So what I did is, instead of um, addressing it in the post, I decided to address it to him in a message. And that I think that's something I was able to overcome because I was able to explain why I have it. But at the same time, um, I did remind him that I was uncomfortable with with the comment that he had made, and I wasn't calling him out on it.
Mhm.
However, I did have to mention that
Mhm.
what it
You
is
addressed it
and
maturely.
why I have it, and he did acknowledge that he had amended his comment, and he had hoped that I was not feeling upset about his comment. And it was really touching to know that he had removed his comment from the post. And that's something I was able to overcome without any feelings of sadness or fear or retaliation. And I think that's something uh, disabled people uh, are maybe afraid of. They're afraid of
A
being
100%.
retaliated against.
I think not only like what you're saying is something that may be experienced more or differently because of a disability, but I think that's something that even any regular person can relate to. Um, when I try and look at these situations from uh, there's these different modes of thinking from different like cultures that you can apply. But basically, one thing I would think to myself is this person that they're saying something, right? Either they're trying to hurt my feelings or they're unintentionally, it's on accident, right? In which case, if they're trying to hurt my feelings, well, then I don't really care about their opinion, right? Like that's kind of, if anything, you can understand that as like a weakness in them. Like what's going on in that person's life that they have to come and try to hurt someone else's feelings to feel better? Like it's so weak. And when you kind of think about it to yourself, like I've got real life stuff that I'm dealing with, and this person is so like imagine how pathetic the life has to be where we're just looking for someone to try and hurt. And then again, the alternative is like it's unintentional, in which case, it makes it feel like it's less painful because it's like, okay, they just don't know, right? Like you don't get upset about a kid who says something, and they don't know. And then so you try to explain it. And I feel like that at least allows you to, uh, you can feel the way you felt at the end from the beginning of the situation ahead of time. And so there's different situations. What I explain, like I put this on because this is something that's weird. It doesn't make any sense. Like there's no reason. It's just a wire. It's just a wire I wrapped up and I just put it around my neck, right? Like a necklace. And so I don't have any reason that I can explain to someone, oh, I'm wearing this because I need to. When they ask me, it's like I just felt like putting this on. If you want to know more about it, like I have all these other subjective reasons why having a wire is relevant to engineering and connecting things and electricity and all the things that I like. But ultimately, like it was kind of a little way of me. preparing myself for the exposure to possible conflict ahead of time. And you realize that if ahead of time you think about it from a, you try to expose yourself to it, then you're not necessarily blindsided. You don't experience the same feelings, right? Like if I go outside, right? Like when I use this the most was when I was in New York. I felt like dancing and I was having a drink and I wanted to go outside to get some sun, but I didn't want to stop dancing. So I told myself like, well, why don't I want to dance outside? And instantly it's like, oh, because I don't want people to judge me or see me or whatever. And so a little thing to start off with, I just put this on. It's like I already know that there's some judgment, so the focus is kind of here. And then now going out there and allowing myself to be free, it was scary, but then I started to feel just so good because it's like when you overcome that, it takes you to like another level where you can. It's like no one can hurt you in a way that you don't allow them to hurt you, but you have to prepare yourself for it ahead of time. And so, like, you recognize that you have a disability, you know that there's a disability there, and simply again, right? Someone's either trying to hurt you, or it's on accident, and those are two easy things to address. If they're trying to hurt you, then to hell with them, right? Like, I'm not going to let them get that. Like, and if
Right.
they're not, then being angry doesn't ever help, or being upset doesn't help. It just makes us feel bad, and it makes it less effective when we try and fix it. If you could help get other people with disabilities to see that too, because you've overcome so much, and like having a role model helps. I think that that can go a long way because there's all sorts of little things that people can take from themselves, what would be a weakness, and turn it into a strength. You know, another weird thing. I have a concave chest. I don't know if I'm trying to compare myself, but my rib cage grows inward instead of like normal like this, and so I got like a dent. And so when I was younger, if I ever went out to like a swimming pit area, I kind of felt nervous. I'd want to have my shirt on or whatever. Then when I'd go swimming, I would take it off and try and like be in the water right here. At some point in time, I just kind of gave up on that. And a few times someone would like straight up ask me, like, what's wrong with your chest? And instead of getting upset or feeling a sort of way, I just thought to myself, oh, let me educate them. This is my concave chest, blah, blah, blah. And then you see that they kind of respond the same way you respond. And it got to a point where I almost never wear a shirt now. Every time these videos come on, I have to have my camera off because I have to go find a shirt. I just like, and so I feel like you're carving that path. But again, like the struggle, the pain, that's what you're gonna be able to show them. Be like, look, all this crap, and I still got through it, man. Like you can do it, especially because I'm gonna be able to help you now. I can help guide you. I think that's gonna be something that you can look forward to. That's gonna make the feeling exciting. Because now it's like, okay, I learned another thing. So now anytime you see another person that you relate to, you have something that you can show them. Like, this is how I feel. You don't have to feel that way. I'm trying to find a way to maximize my failure to success rate, I guess.
Well, Anthony, it goes to the very dynamic of seeking common ground with somebody. And it's not about, and this is what I've learned as well, since I was in special education from K through 12, is I've now reframed, and I'm sure, Jay, you've done this too as well. And thank you for that powerful share, Anthony, about you having to go through what you've gone through, especially when it even comes to swimming. Um, it's not about the disability. It isn't, because if you allow others to say that you have this disability or you have this thing that's going to keep you from doing this and that kind of thing, you're going to have that played black in your mind, and then you will literally believe your own very narrative, so to speak, of what others project you to actually either not really being, but they are projecting that on you for you to really say to yourself, maybe I am this, when in fact the reality is actually the 180-degree opposite. And that's why I have learned, and Jay, I truly believe maybe for you, you probably have learned that too, to where saying, even though you may have this rare kind of thing going on in your life, you said to yourself, I'm not going to let this stop me. I'm going to keep moving forward. Yeah, there's going to be some days it's going to be hard and everything like that. But again, it's about reframing life in this kind of context. And Jay, I would love to hear your thought on that too as well. It's about really recognizing life happens for you versus to you.
That's right.
Yeah.
And actually, life happens, right? Just during the Easter weekend, I had experienced uh uh my hospital. I had experienced hospitalization, and I, you know, when and it was just, an old like it was like late. It was a late Saturday, and then late Saturday. No, early Sunday. No, late Saturday afternoon. Sunday afternoon. I'm sorry. To like early Monday morning in the wee hours. Um, I had experienced, things like abdominal pain, and and that kind of was like, you know, it's something I was able to overcome pretty quickly, even though, I had to go through hard pain. And at that time, we didn't have the respirator. We didn't think that we would have to go to the hospital. But once after I got, detached and released and came home, I was able to overcome that episode with pretty much plenty of sleep and even taking a day off from work, because I was in nowhere in that capacity. Even though I was able to come back, I had to find some way to overcome that pain. So it was in my best interest to not go to work and, you know uh, just focus on my academics. And that was something I was able to overcome pretty quickly. And even before then, there have been many times where I have been in the hospital. I'll give you another uh, uh, another time. Even during the pandemic, when I was diagnosed with COVID, I was diagnosed for 1 week. But even though I had COVID, you know, that didn't stop me from, you know, doing some of the things that I can do, in my room, listen to music, maybe read, or, you know, socialize on social media. Um, you know, even even today, I've learned to use LinkedIn for about, I think, 2 or 3 years. um, I was able to learn a new skill, and that's another thing I was able to do in order to overcome my my disability. And also, and yeah, I mean, those are some examples of the overcoming portion. um I did I truly believe that we that everyone, whether you're disabled or not, you should always be grateful for what you can do instead of what you can't do.
100%. I think you gained more from those situations than you might even be aware of. What One thing you can think about, if there's anything that you've ever had in your life and you could just have it over and over and over again, it loses its meaning. So if you just had something that was sweet or candy and all you did was eat it, eventually you'd be sick of it. You wouldn't, it become normal. And so a lot of people go through their lives, and because they don't have those kind of scares that allow them to realize, like, hey, this is temporary, you need to focus on realizing who you are, which is probably why you're going out of your way to do more than what's required of you. Instead, what will happen is most people will just keep living every day like they're fine. Then, when they finally do end up in a hospital type of environment, they're surprised, like, I shouldn't be. What's going on? And it's too late now. They never took the time. If that would have happened to them maybe 20 years earlier, they would have had 20 years of thinking, like, hey, this is going to go away eventually. what is something that I want to do for me or for the world or for whatever. But because they don't think about it, they don't value their lives that much. They wake up and they're like, I just got to go over there and pound some sand for 8 hours, and then I'm going to take my money, move it over here. I got all these obligations, and they keep forgetting that those obligations don't mean anything because they're gonna be dead. Like what's left behind? The problem is by the time they realize that they're out of time, it's too late. You keep getting these things, you stack them up, and you keep going. So when you're laying on your deathbed and you're looking back on it, I don't think you're gonna think to yourself like, ah man, I really wish I would have, you know, not been scared. You're probably gonna look back and think to yourself, man, look at all those things where like I tried, I failed, I tried, I failed, I overcame, and I did this thing, I did that. Like even if it doesn't turn out to be like, because it's not like it's trying to be like a money, or it's not about things. It's really looking back on your life and you're thinking about who you are and what you wanted and whether or not you actually did anything with that. Because again, if you don't know how fragile your life is because you don't experience that, then you'll neglect yourself and what matters to you. You won't take those challenges. You'll be too afraid of failing, forgetting that you're going to die. You don't have that. I mean, and discovering yourself, like who you are, I don't think there's anything that anyone can give you that's worth more than that. You could be a billionaire and then you're sitting on your deathbed. What does that matter to you now? Right? You're literally going to be all that's going to be left is a mossy tombstone that's going to fall over eventually. People are going to be driving by your tombstone on the highway to do their nonsense. But what did you leave behind? You'll think about that time you had the chance to do something, but you were afraid because I might get criticized or judged, or I might lose this or that. But when you've basically come face to face with losing it all, now I don't think that like you don't have that same fear of failure from what I can tell. Like you know there's overcoming. I think that's something you could definitely help people see more of too.
Yeah, and see, the beautiful thing about that, Anthony, is when you're again willing to step forward in life and you're willing to do that, um, it's a true testament to someone's not only, like you said, resilience, but perseverance. They say, I am it's almost like a friend of mine said to me many years ago when one of his friends actually was diagnosed with cancer at one point. And he said the whole family gathered around and said, you know what? Uh, Now, you know what? The whole family, we are cancer. And they said it together. And they are a part of that together. So when you really think about it, Anthony and Jay, again, a disability or tragedy doesn't define us, but what defines us though is out of that we had that determination to say we're going to take this and we're going to completely flip it on its head and say it's not a disability, it is not cancer, we are cancer, this is how we're going to beat it. And it's literally a mindset shift to such a degree that when people see that out of each and every single one of us, to a large degree, that if it's like with you, Jay, having a rare breathing disorder, or with someone who's got, let's say, a hand cut off, or a foot cut off, or even to one of those kind of things that we don't even really see, that we look at somebody thinking they're completely normal, but literally there's something inside of them that makes them completely different. And we just don't really take a second look at that very person for who they really are. And when you really think about it and you really say, I really wanted to get to know who Jay is, or Anthony, or Margaret, or Meryl, or whatever that Melanie, whoever that might be. And you're absolutely right, Margaret. We are overcomers when we allow ourselves to say again, life happens for us rather than to us. We can overcome anything and anything that we want, because when we have that hope and faith to a large degree, then it's about that again, that state of mind. And no one can take that from any one of us, because if we have that state of mind that we're so hopeful for the better day, then next thing you know, when other people saying, hey, they just broke down on the side of the road. Okay. You think people would go off on the deep end. I've seen some people who would do that. They will be on the side of the road kicking their car and getting all bent out of
Yeah.
shape. Why? It's not going to help you any. So that's why if you keep your cool, say, this is how I'm going to do it, this is what we're going to come out of it, the next thing you know, other people start realizing, hey, I don't have it probably as bad and everything, but yet Jay has done phenomenally well. And now, when you really think about it, and I will go to this great quote from Star Wars that really kind of will put a really big bow on this. It's about embracing others for their differences for that which makes you whole. And I truly believe, gentlemen and everyone, when we make people whole by very definition, we don't pick them apart and say that they're disabled when in fact they're actually able and they do have a superpower. They do have gifts. And we literally not only reframe our lives in the way we speak to people, but we reframe the very life of the people that we surround ourselves with and say, they have these things. And then what's going to happen in turn, they do probably the very same thing with you. Hey, Anthony has this great quality. Chris has this great trait about leadership, or whatever the case may be. And then when people start seeing that over and over and over again through the power of consistency, the next thing you know, more people will start seeing the community based in unity, not for what is not there, but like you said, Jay, for what is there.
Yeah, I think a big problem that comes from people not considering themselves as much as they should. Like they're so focused in the external world that they forget about the internal world and who and what they are. So for like example, there was a situation where I kind of made this joke that every time I would like spill something, or like imagine there's that moment where like something slips out of your hand and it's approaching the floor and there's that like shock moment. But before it hits the floor and before it cracks, my next response that comes out of my mouth is like, damn, I still have no design for a time machine. Like, because for me, it's like, I'm an engineer, I like to design stuff. And to make it a joke like that is to really look at it and think to myself, okay, how do I want to feel? Do I want to feel crappy, angry, frustrated, or would I rather not? And if the answer is I'd rather not feel frustrated and angry, then stop just like reliving it. Like, oh my goodness, look at the car. I'm not supposed to be. Just, it already happened and you can't go backwards. But what you can do is you can decide, do I want to spend another 5 minutes, an hour? Do I want to relive this when I get home at my wife? Ah, damn, I can't believe and still whatever. Or do you want to just be like, focused on literally the next moment? Like, okay, this beautiful cup of coffee, my gosh, it's so perfect. You look out there, just you can literally manipulate yourself if you pay attention to yourself. But we fail to pay attention to ourselves. We pay attention to the world. Your emotions go wild, and then I feel like it makes it difficult to recognize the greatness in other people, to recognize what they have, because they haven't recognized themselves. They're living this checklist type of lifestyle where you're supposed to do these things and things are supposed to go a certain way. And when something's not on the checklist, instead of just going, okay, new checklist, they just start freaking out. And that's part of the culture that I think we should be trying to change. Like if you focus on yourself first, just ask myself, like, how do I feel? Do I want to feel this way? Does feeling this way help me in any way? It's like, no. So I don't want to do it and it doesn't help. Why the hell am I doing it? Like, why am I letting this happen again and again? And then I found myself at some point in time getting angry at myself for getting angry. So like I was getting angry at something and I looked down at my thing. I was like, I've been angry about this for 15 minutes. And then now I'm not angry about the thing. I was angry about being angry, which then kind of turned into a joke. And now I'm laughing at myself. And I'm like, all right, well, this is, just finding ways to like look for the silver lining, really. Just recognize that no one understands you better than you do. All the questions, all the answers inside your head, how you feel. We have to stop forgetting. And I'm saying that to myself, stop forgetting to check in with yourself. Like, okay, something's changed and I don't like the change. What am I going to do about it? Maybe there's a person in front of you saying something mean. Like, I don't like the way I feel right now. And then it's like, so what are you going to do? Just get angry at them again, and then they're back and forth. It's like, no, no, no. I'm not going to let that happen anymore because I just don't want it to happen anymore.
Yeah.
I can still have the conversation, but I'm not going to let them get me angry because I just don't want to feel that way. And then you start feeling happy because you can manipulate it, and it's a real positive feedback loop.
Yeah.
But I'm talking a lot now, so I'm gonna have to call it.
But but
Um,
but Jay, I gotta ask you this, but this came up for me, and I wanted to ask you this.
Yeah.
When it comes to change in and of itself throughout life, and that's the one constant we can actually be guaranteed to have in and of itself. Number one, how do you embrace change? And number two, how do you take that change to other people to be a positive, maybe force or have a positive impact on people? How's that play out in your life?
Well, you know, Chris, there's a saying, change is inevitable, but at the same time, change is good.
Yeah.
And uh, we are, we are always, uh, capable of adapting to that change, whether we like it or not. Um, and I'll I'll give you a real life example. Okay, when you go into um a store, right? The store makes changes, renovation. They may change the layout. They may change the management. They may change uh the location of the inventory, right? Um, uh, and you know when even in the years that I've worked in the retail industry, you know, um, we used to. Uh, there were some things that when I first started, there were some things that Walmart didn't have layout wise and inventory wise and management wise. But yet, as the years go on, things have changed. Management, HR, inventory, the layout of the whole store, and the policy itself, whether when the policy itself that affects the customer, right? And uh the you know uh
what do you do about that change,
in
though?
my I'm sorry.
What do you do about that change? You get there and you're like,
Yeah,
the
you
milk's
know
supposed to be here. Where the hell's the milk?
what do I do about that change? I if there are meetings, I talk about some of the changes that need to be made. I raise those concerns when there are meetings for our department. If there's nothing I can do, I just adapt. I adapt to the change. I
I don't
work
have any
with
other
the
choice.
change. I learn from the change. Um, that's what I do because anything that the store or whatever store, any changes that the store does, it is not in my control. It is not in the store management's control. It is all up to, well, it kind of is, but everything goes from the high up, from the headquarters side,
So
right?
ask
And
yourself, am I going to do anything about this? Like, probably not. And so
yeah,
it doesn't even matter where the change comes
exactly.
from. It's like,
So whatever changes are made, I just have to work with the change. I have to adapt with the change, And I think, um, and like I said, change is good, but and change can be bad. But again, we have to work with the change. We have to adapt with it. And if it's out of control, still we have to work with it and adapt to it.
I try and manipulate myself. You said sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. I was like, sometimes it's good, and sometimes it's just good in a different way. Like either it's good and it's convenient, and I like it because it's pleasant, or it's good and it's forcing me into some scenario that I don't like, that's uncomfortable, which is evolving me in a way, right? It's preparing me to deal with other changes or to evolve, just because it's something that is undesirable, but it is. You can look around and think to yourself, well, how much pain or suffering am I going to allow this to put on my chest versus someone else, and or what I could have done. And just the fact that you can practice getting better at accepting the things that you can't change. I don't know, it's like a positive delusion. You can delude yourself
Mhm.
into just looking at reality. I think Jocko Willink said it. He said, no matter what happens, good. They say, like, the people that are coming up the side and they're blocking us in, good. You gotta wake up, good. You get whatever it is, just good. And the alternative is like what you want to have it be bad, and then you decide that you're gonna make it worse by like dwelling into it.
Yeah.
There's some, it's like if someone passed gas and you went up and started smelling their area. It's like you can walk away. You can pull
Sorry.
yourself out of the negative situation, but instead
Yeah.
it's like people see something like, oh my goodness, this is awful. It hurts, and they pick it up and start playing with it, giving
Yeah.
it to people.
Yeah.
But
It's an obsession.
I will say though, even in our personal life, right? When you want to change something, it's always a good idea to try out the change. You know,
Mhm.
um, one thing that I will say is that if let's just say my mom is working on uh wants me to um I don't know, say help her with her coursework. She wants me to correct some papers. Okay. So if she wants me to, if she comes up with an idea as to how she wants me to do, if she comes up with some instructions as to how she wants me to do it, I can say to myself, okay, let me try her method. If that doesn't work, how can I how can I change the way I am completing the task? Maybe there's something I need to change. Maybe there's an easier way of doing it.
Mhm.
And then try it out.
Yeah.
See if it works. If it doesn't succeed, no problem. Go back to the original method and stick with it.
You know, I,
And I'm glad you're mentioning that. And
yeah.
I know we got to close down the call here in just a couple of minutes. But for me, it comes down to this very simple dynamic. There are many paths to everything that we do in life, and the way we actually lead our lives too as well. There are many paths to do it. And again, it's about recognizing choice. Choice is the ultimate path to freedom. But then again, like you said, Jay, if one thing doesn't work, that's not the end all be all. You can be able to say, maybe I go back to step one. That's okay. Starting over is the natural part of life. Absolutely. But when we do start over, and we like Anthony said from Jocko Willenick, when he said, "Hey, it's good. Okay, it's good. Okay, it's okay. I have no problem with that." Because again, like I said before, it becomes a mindset shift in your head that you can literally put it on muscle memory rerun, so to speak, that hey, if this plan A didn't work, plan B is in the hole, ready to go, and then you have that there. But then again, like, you got to recognize, and John C. Maxwell said it best in his great book, The 21 Different Laws of Leadership. You got to let the best idea win. Maybe what you say And plan A might be you think that you might work well for you, but when in fact it could be plan B. You really don't know until you actually go to it. But then again, you always have something in your pocket, regardless, because you say, it's okay, it's good. We got it from this. And that's what I truly believe, gentlemen. So I know we had a great and engaging conversation. I know we're going to have more in depth with all of us on board, and we'll definitely be looking forward to that. But I want to get both of you guys' takeaway today and everything like that. So today, Anthony, what was your takeaway from today's conversation?
Well, honestly, listening to Jay talk about his personal situations as well as other interactions with people that have so-called disabilities, I feel like the main ability that I've noticed is that a certain level of maturity that it forces you to have that others don't have, and it's that maturity really it's really impactful in the way you look at your life. And it doesn't matter if you have everything if you hate it, right? Uh, but if you have just a little thing, but you know that you can turn it into something else, and if it doesn't work, you'll try again, then you have hope for every next day. You have something you're striving toward. And I think that's something everyone could use more of.
100%. Jay, your big takeaways from today's conversation today.
My big takeaway is that, you know, here's my big takeaway. And I think this quote says it best. May the force be with us all, right? That's my big takeaway because you know what? Here's something that I noticed. And here's something that we can all take away. Okay? The force will always guide us in the right direction. It will never steer you in the wrong direction. And never, never use anger or too much power to uh to uh to express yourself because that can lead you to what happened to Darth Vader. He got seduced
Mm-hmm.
by the dark side. He got seduced by Darth Sidious and to the dark side of the Force because of his expression of anger and his need for too much power. So never
That
use
comes
your anger
Mm-hmm.
and power. Always use,
Mm-hmm.
use good and love and non-hate it everywhere. Be like the light side of
Yeah.
the Force. Don't be seduced by the dark side.
anger is always stems from fear generally, and so
Yeah.
that's another thing. If you're acting in fear, that fear, Yoda said it right. Fear turns to fear turns to anger, anger turns to hate. I think I might have skipped one. And hate turns to suffering.
Fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to
hmm
Yes,
And a
suffering.
real world example is when you're on the highway and someone merges into you and you're cursing them out and yelling and freaking out. It's simply because you were afraid of getting hurt in that moment. So now here you are
Yeah.
doing something that doesn't help the situation at all, but it makes you feel worse and leads you
Exactly.
further down the dark side.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. And my big takeaway, gentlemen, from today's great and engaging conversation with you, Jay, and thank you so much for sharing your story and being so vulnerable today with us. And like I said, I can't wait to do more with both of you gentlemen very soon. But my big takeaway is this, and again, it comes from Master Yoda yet again. And when he says to Luke Skywalker in The Last Jedi, failure is the best teacher. And here's why. Without failure, gentlemen, we wouldn't even know what success is. And that is why success is literally interconnected to failure because without it, we wouldn't know how we won, how we actually came on out on top, how we became better for it. So success and failure are so interconnected, but again, it is a mindset shift because if you truly feel like you failed and you are always going to be in that hole and you can never get out of it, that's when you play maybe the victim card, you put the mask on, and you'll have imposter syndrome and everything in between. But then again, like what Jay said, You can choose that. You can choose not go down the dark path forever or dominate your destiny and go to the way like what Darth Vader did, but you can choose to say, I'm going to have balance in my life. I can be on the right side of things, and I choose to live my life in this way because I look at failure as the greatest teacher there is because I deem it so because it's not a net negative, it's truly a positive. And that's my big takeaway from today. So Jay, sir, thank you so much for joining us today. And as always, Anthony, always great to hear from you, sir. Looking forward to speaking to both you gentlemen very soon offline too as well. And again, if you guys want to come share your story on Conversation for Humanity, we would love for you to do so. And the guest scheduling link is right here. So that not only is it on our YouTube channel, it's actually on LinkedIn too as well. We would love to hear that. And throughout the week, we still have more Star Wars driven conversations moving ahead. So, of course, tomorrow will be The Path. And that was inspired, in fact, not by no other than Anthony here, because we had that great call yesterday. So we'll be talking about The Path tomorrow, and we will get more into it, but I'm just going to leave it there. So, Jay, thank you, sir. Anthony, you have a great day, sir. Thank you so much, and we'll see you on Tales from Hyperspace